this past week we were initially going to talk about in the context of Silent Planet, talking about that somebody brought a fucking machete to the venue,
which is so wild.
Which is absolutely insane. And then, they made the joke about the merch cuts. A lot of bands have been talking about merch cuts endlessly. I recently talked to Shane Told from Silverstein about his take on it. And like some of the things we said have aged like milk already. Because, it just broke Live Nation. Sort of. I guess we'll get to my opinion on this, but I want to hear yours as well. But, we got into, Live Nation with Willie Nelson doing this On the Road Again initiative where, they announced this thing, $1,500, gas stipend or whatever it was to bands doing X amount of shows with them. No merge cuts. They kind of announce it as if it's this big thing. We'll get into the details here. It's not that clear cut. But overall with this, with specifically Live Nation and with the discourse around merch cuts with this, do you view this as a good thing? Do you view this as cynically as maybe I'm going to get to on my end of things?
No,
or what's your take on this from hearing the initial news?
It's cynical for sure. I think, and somebody that we both now posted on actually Facebook, it was like, for all of you celebrating the merch cuts, that Live Nation's making, I have really bad news about how capitalism works. And it's, it is so true too. Like the merch cuts might go away, the stipends might happen, but like, who's that going to fall back on? That's going to be, if the White Claws at the venue are going to be $4 more or whatever, they're going to make that money back. They're not taking a loss, right? So I think it's a double-edged sword, right? Like it's good for the bands for sure. Maybe they can sell more merch, and like I think that'll be beneficial. Like who's going to win? Are going to be the bands are going to win, and Live Nation is going to win. But I think ultimately we're going to lose, right? People who are going to like buy it. And then you're going to have to decide, okay, like, I guess at the end of the day, right, there's going to be a point where they fall off a cliff, right? Where Live Nation says, okay, hey, we need to make sure we jack up the prices of this, or like, I don't know if they really control ticket prices. I think that might be Ticketmaster's thing, but we're going to make more costs on the tickets. Even they can charge at least like the doors a little bit more, right? And,
right.
People are either still going to buy it or they're not, right? So, it's good for the bands, good for Live Nation, bad for us.
Yeah, and even to the bands, obviously it's going to be good for Live Nation. It's a good PR move on their end. It's been the discourse for quite a while from, smaller bands, but even bands like Bad Omens, who have like obviously blown up to something absolutely ridiculous proportions the last several years. They've touched on this issue. Andy Sizik from Monuments and Termina, which the new record just came out and all that, has been talking about this endlessly. Silent Planet, all these sort of like club level bands, that are kind of on the up and up, and all those instances have been talking about this endlessly, right? And I think, the initial reaction is understandable, where people are like, hey, we're finally getting this. We're getting, but then you look into the details. Like I've been reading some reporting on it from journalists that luckily dive into this stuff that Live Nation on their website, when you look at it, so vague. Like you have to dig super deep into the details to really figure out what is happening. And, it's not all of their club venues. It's specific ones. Like you can find some sheets that show like specific ones.
Yeah, I think it was like the Fillmores, the House of Blues, some of the big name ones, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's that, and then there's some states where they're not doing it at all, right? I know New Jersey was one where like no states or no venues that Live Nation owns are a part of that.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
What's up? Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Right on. I was gonna say, do you think that like that's just gonna dictate what bands and promoters decide to do? Like, hey, let's dodge New Jersey real quick because all of those venues have merge cuts, or like let's only get these venues. It's going to be like a competitive market for, hey, can we get the venues without the merge cuts so that we can pay so and so on our tour, X amount of money or whatever. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think one thing that I tried to be better about with stuff like this in general is to say, like, anything I'm saying, I don't know, right? Like, I'm not going to pretend that I really know what's going on with this, but I will say I'm a bit cynical that this is permanent. Like, there is some reporting that shows that this could end as early as January. They've said several times in several press releases over the next few months. There was some people are saying this taken out of context or whatever, but there's some other like reporting from Pitchfork and I know like the National Independent Venue Association has really talked about that this seems more like a targeted attack on the venues that they represent. I think it's a lot of up in the air. I do think it's good for the bands that are going to be playing at those venues. Like I think it'd be silly to say otherwise that it's not. Like I'm sure
Right.
those bands are happy about that for the interim, but like you said, being people that follow capitalism and are cynical on business practices, I just look at this and it's like the entertainment industry, the music industry specifically, it's not different than another one run by massive corporations that is monopolizing business, right? Like there is no end game here of like, oh, it's the benevolent figures that are listening to public pressure and now they're just going to happen to do this and it's all going to be fine. Like I would be surprised if this is a permanent initiative, I guess. You know what I mean?
I
And
don't
like,
I don't
while
know
it'd be
though
great.
because I don't know though because I feel like do you remember what happened to Waves like a couple months back when Waves Audio was like,
Yeah.
"Hey, we're doing right," and then they got smoked. They got like all the consumers were
Yes,
like,
they did.
"This is a horrible business model," and I mean, I understand why Waves was trying to do it, but it was just a horrible way to go about it, right? And what I feel like is
Yeah.
Live Nation is going to suffer the same thing. Is that if they say, "Hey, no merch cuts for these 77 venues or whatever," and then they like pull that back and they pull it back quick. They pull it back within the next 6 months. They go, maybe not. Just kidding. Like they will get brutalized, I think. And I don't know if they're. I mean, I think they're kind of too big to like care if they get brutalized, right?
Yeah.
But
Right.
um, but I also think that's just gonna be a bad PR stunt for them if they do that, right? And then what's that gonna mean? They have to think about that at least.
Yeah, I think you could be right. I'm gonna push back a little bit on that and say there's a big difference between. I get your point, but I think there's a big difference between Waves, which we know plugin companies. I know Waves, I think, is the biggest one overall, but like it's not like Waves controls 90% of plugin sales,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Like
Yeah,
like
no, that's
Live
the reason
Nation
why they
and
were doing that is because they didn't.
Ticketmaster. Yeah, right. And like, I talked to Joey Sturgis about the Waves thing even, and he was like, people are dunking on it, but he, as somebody that runs another plugin company, was like, yeah, but otherwise we're all at a race to the bottom and we don't really know how to do this. And yet, so from the business perspective, he was like, it's not that crazy and it'll probably happen to more than you think eventually, right? But to the overarching point of like Live Nation, like I agree with you, it'll be bad PR, but like Live Nation is not new to like horrific PR, right? Like it's
Right.
kind of like Comcast, right? Like they probably have like a 20% approval rating among the public or less. Like nobody likes Live Nation. Even bigger bands like just know they have to deal with them or whatever. Might work with like a rep that's fine. But like I I could see it going permanent, but at the same time, it's like you know, I don't trust anything that isn't like negotiated by bands, negotiated by like the floor up, in the instance of like, not to reference politics outside of music, but like the difference between like the entertainment industry with like movies and actors and writers and things like that and the music industry is that like the music industry is much more laissez-faire, like not disconnected. There is no, I mean, so disconnected, there is no solidarity across the board. There's unions, but they don't strike in a way that would like upset Live Nation's bottom
Yeah.
line,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so again, I just go back to, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope this, like, to be clear, anybody listening, like I don't like sit here and like this is gonna happen, and like I hope it's permanent, but like I'll believe it when I see it, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like I'm not in the industry, either, right? So I
Yeah.
can I can only say just
Right.
off like a business perspective. I see that it came out at a great time for them, to everyone's bitching about it, and then they go, I mean, and rightfully so. And then they go, oh hey, by the way, let's just get in good favors with people real quick. And will they find a way to get that money? Absolutely. Will they maybe dial it back slowly over time? For sure. But I don't, or like make a different percentage cut they get of something, right? They're gonna get their money and they're gonna make more money and they're gonna keep making more money every year. So like the
Yep.
way they do it is gonna be different, but Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't see them. I don't see them doing an abrupt rollback of it. In 3
Yeah,
4 months
yeah.
after they announce it, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's probably the smarter take than my socialist bullshit I'm saying over here, right? But like on a positive note for it, I think what could happen from this, and to plug this a little bit, Jordan Ewell, who I believe you did the edit of that episode, we talked a little bit about some of like the issues in the music industry and solidarity and doing a big enough block, to beat back Live Nation or at least merch cuts and stuff like that. And he, with an organization he does, started this website. He runs this thing called Move On campaign, and they recently did one where they have like hundreds of actors and artists and stuff like signing on to stop book banning, which is a great thing. But they also started this endmerchcuts.com campaign
Yeah.
thing that
Yep.
they're doing where like and it's not, and he's like, this is a good start, but we got to keep pushing. And I think that's what bands and managers and people on kind of the creative, artistic, or even just like managing bands aspect should look at, is like, this is a moment to keep pushing. This isn't a moment to go like, thank God Live Nation did this.
No.
It's like,
Yeah.
no, you
Exactly.
guys did
Just
this.
tuck
If
your tail between
anything,
your legs
you
afterwards and just chill.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You got to just keep pushing, and you got to be like, all right, let's keep this permanent. Let's not make this just select venues. Let's make this festivals. Let's make this everything. This needs to be out of the realm of conversation that this is even going on. And I think that is the positive side of this, because I don't want to be all doom and gloom about it, that bands and fans even as well, like, fans can help out with this as well, that like you keep pushing, like, all right, let's do this here, let's do this there, let's look at what else is keeping bands back from making a decent living that are doing this as a full-time gig at the very least, right?
Right.
And all those different things. I think it's a good jumping off point for people to be like, all right, like, don't hit the brakes, hit the gas on this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No. I mean,
All
I
right.
agree. I
Yep.
think though that like there's a point though where you like, I mean, you have to be like strategical about how you push, right? Because I feel like what
Mm-hmm.
happens is just think about the auto strikes right now, the union strikes for
Mm-hmm.
auto workers, right? Where it's like you push so hard to a point where the media picks it up, and then you kind of become the villain for pushing back on something that you should be pushing back on, right? It's not like
Yeah.
it's you shouldn't be fighting it, but when there comes so much push on one thing like repeatedly, it fixes things, but then the media picks it up and kind of twists it around. I don't know how to accurately describe that more, but like you don't want to become the
Yeah.
villain
Yeah.
because you're trying to do the right thing, right?
Well, of course, but to the comparison again to the auto workers union thing, Sean Fien, I forget how to say his last name, but the auto workers union president, he is like fucking killing it with how he's handling it, because they're
Yeah.
actually like, it's like 75% public approval for the strikes. People are like, what the fuck are you doing? You've got both presidents, one, I mean, both hollowly, but both like having to address it in the Republican debate. You had somebody like pointing out, like, are you supporting the workers, right? And stuff like
Yeah.
that. Like, because like they're organizing in such a perfect way that, yeah, the media is going to paint them as villains, but the media is owned by fucking, they probably run ads from Ford and
Right.
GM and all that shit,
Right.
right? So like, I agree with you. Like, to your point on that though, you have to be strategic and smart about it. Like, and that's
Yeah.
where I'll stand by some of the things that Shane and I said, where I was like, yeah, just like sitting and being vapid about like merch cuts, or whatever else, and not like organizing like intelligently on this is like, you might get some things, you might get a good thing like what we've got seemingly with Live Nation at the moment from them, but like it's where like organizing is a big part of this. Like, if you want to keep pushing through this and getting things better and more equitable for bands and anything else, or even fans experience at venues, like, you have to work with other bands, and you have to like kind of make a block for yourself. And the problem with that is like, so many bands have little beefs or there's so much
Right.
like toxic
Right.
discourse in the music industry compared to like auto workers unions, or even like actors guilds, or writers, or whatever else, teachers unions, whatever the case may be, that I think it would take a lot of work, but I think that it could be done, to some extent. But like, yeah, to bring it back, I think it's a good starting point for bands and anybody on their teams and everything like that to help with money. But you just got to keep pushing to make sure it's actually something good for everybody and not just like a PR grab and a few bucks thrown to bands to just make sure it stays as a hellhole in a different way, you know?
Yeah, it's like a hush money almost.
But
right.
Yeah. Here's some money. Now shut the fuck up and stop talking about it. But yeah, no, I think it was great to look into. We'll see as this goes along, like any updates on it, and as we continue to do these things, we'll look at the updates there. But I am definitely just like cynical about it, happy for the bands, but also just like wondering what the catch is. You know what I mean? And I think there will be, but we'll see. Hopefully I'm wrong.